these are the systems that we really need to protect and create. Partly why I'm now situated there is because it feels more like a human system that really takes care of people and asks us to work on the relationship we have with people, regardless of whether we agree with them or not.
That was Zola Ndimande. Yes, another Zola. She's a friend of mine, a Zulu woman in South Africa, who I interview in 2021 for the Women Revolutionizing Housing Network. It is found on the Common Ground YouTube channel as a video, and I decided to redo it for this podcast so that you have an opportunity to really appreciate this beautiful story. What I like about this interview is that it provides a contrast to our current narrative that most of us hold around house, land, construction, and value. So, for instance, usually we think about men as builders. Yet in this interview, we hear that she is building her own home, learning from another woman, and that it is quite common to find women as house builders. We talk about the fact that land is usually externally valued, and that value is retained even if it's being unused, versus in the traditional Zulu areas, land is a means to be in relationship with others, and that if a person is living there, the person is the one of value, and land is really only valuable if it is being used. If it's not being used, it's given back over to the community to be put to use by someone else. In our current modern society, individualism and striving for one's own success is highly valued versus really thinking about one's place in a neighborhood or one's home as being part of the fabric of community, and that a person in place is here for us. We talk about the usual need for contractors to be involved in construction, and here Zola speaks about using local skills and knowledge and local people for construction. We speak about, in modern society, a home builder would be highly qualified, building for others, and providing that house for customers, versus in the traditional sense, people are building for themselves. They are creators, and they're learning the skills as they go. Building modern is seen as ideal, and we wanted to contrast that with traditional building, which gives a sense of belonging and connection to culture and connection to the local and renewable materials, and being proud of creating one's own structure versus feeling shame of building something simple. And so we redefine what it means to be happy, to rather be content with the basics and creation for oneself. We speak about the fact that in traditional areas, there is no restriction on the ways of building. So there's no regulatory rules and policies, which typically in a lot of modern societies do govern, which can add cost and time. Versus she says that actually it could even take weeks if one is using traditional building methods. That's amazing to create a structure in only weeks. And we talk about the fact that in the traditional lands, when one's occupying a new piece of land, that the first building built is for spirit. It's called the spirit house, which connects to the ancestors and is a place for connection with community and with special occasions and celebrations, versus building that is focused on profit making. So these are some of the things that we contrast between what we think about building land construction and actually having a new perspective on how we might think about building that is more accessible, more affordable, more empowering, more creative. And that's why I wanted to share this episode again. I also did an episode where I'm interviewing my daughter about how we lived in South Africa. We moved to New Zealand in 2016, so we talk about the time between 2007 and 2016 when we had a similar ethos because we lived in the Zulu area of KwaZulu Natal, And we speak about how we also had pride in building our own home and developing the land to be productive around us and our relationship with land, nature, and community. So if you're interested to hear that episode, go back to May 2025. And just to clarify some of the terminology that you will hear, Zola is a Zulu woman, which is an ethnic tribe in South Africa. She has her home and land in KwaZulu Natal, which is one of the 9 provinces. She mentions a 1,000,000 rand house. So rand is the monetary currency in South Africa. She mentions a rondavel, which is the spirit house, which is a traditional round shape. Wattle and daub, which is one of the building methods. So wattle is a tree, the branches then form part of the structure, and daub is the building mud that fills in between. And we also use some Te Reo Māori words because some of the guests in that interview are Māori. And so we use the word korero, which is to talk or a discussion, whenua, which is the land, and Papatuanuku with Mother Earth. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you think. And please, in the comments, write to me about your perspectives, what it inspires in you. Do you feel empowered to perhaps build your own home out of earthen materials or to travel and see how other people do this? It is meant as a form of inspiration to you, and I'd love to hear what it does inspire. And now I would like to make some announcements. I'm running a year series held monthly on the first Tuesday of the month from 12 to 1:30 for women revolutionizing housing. So this is sort of a continuation of the Hui that we held in November, but it is actually open to any woman who would like to join in. The format of the monthly events is going to be a resourcing of a woman's project where she has a real or conceptual project. We're also going to learn something about community-focused housing or property development that we all think is useful, and we'll have time for networking in small groups. It's aimed to be fun and interactive, participatory, interesting. And so if you are a woman, you can check out the Common Ground website, sign up for the newsletter, and I'll be sending out regular updates, including a way to register for that event. The other thing, in early 2026, in Nelson, we have on the 10th to the 13th of April, the Aotearoa National Permaculture Hui, Building Community Through Permaculture. There'll be inspiring keynote speakers, innovative workshops, dynamic networking, great kids area, and hands-on learning. And there's field trips going from the 13th to the 15th of April where you can see real-life permaculture properties. You can go to permaculture.org.nz/Hui, that's HUI, to find out more and get your tickets. I'm going to be there, hopefully presenting, and so I look forward to seeing you if you're in Aotearoa. And I also have a request. If you've been benefiting from this show and would like it to continue and help us to grow the audience, then please do share it with your friends and your colleagues. You can find it on Apple or Spotify, on Podbean, and other apps, and on the Common Ground YouTube channel. So please share it so that we can grow our reach and bring these important narratives to more people. And if you have a guest in mind or you yourself would like to be a guest, then please be in touch with me, Zola at commonground.net.nz. I look forward to hearing from you. Let's get on to the show. Kia ora and welcome to the Homefulness Show. I'm your host, Zola Rose, located in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We believe housing can be a means for regenerative placemaking, to create affordable and sustainable homes and neighborhoods developed in collaboration with the communities that live there. We'll be exploring different housing models and neighborhood designs and innovation in energy, water, waste, construction, land use, and food systems. We showcase housing policies, finance, funding, and community engagement to unlock this potential. This show aims to empower you with knowledge, resources, and networks to support you in creating great places to live. Come join us as we bring to life the more beautiful housing that we know is possible.
I'm a Zulu woman. I speak Zulu and a few other languages here. At the moment, I'm in Cape Town, where my daughter is situated. I also live in Zululand, which is KwaZulu Natal, which is kind of in the middle of South Africa, but on the east coast. That's where a lot of the Zulu people live. They're all over South Africa, but that's kind of like the base homesteads and the rural spaces there. Currently, I do quite a few projects. I'm a culturist and I'm a doula. I am an artist. One of the family members where I'm living is building in a natural way. She asked me to help her, which was just amazing. So I got to be part of that. And I'm still part of that. I had a conversation with Zola to talk about this experience with her and to integrate it even a little bit more and to talk about the land rights around how we do things in South Africa.
Where in KwaZulu Natal are you?
So I'm in a place called Ndwedwe. It's about an hour away from Durban Airport in the northern middle part of East South Africa. So,
That's your
yeah.
land in Ndwedwe? Is that where your parents or your ancestral land is?
Yeah, a lot of the land lives under the ancestral or tribal authority, and different families get given different pieces of land years ago. A lot of the land is still under that custodianship. My grandfather or my great grandfather received one of these pieces of land from the king, from the ruling structure at the time. When apartheid and colonization happened, a lot of the land got transferred into the government structures, more around commercial money. And then there was certain kingships decided that they did not want to do that. And so there's two systems that currently happen in South Africa where you have land, which is banks and all of that. You get a loan and you buy land and you have a title deed. And then there's a different structure for the tribal people. You go to the ruling kingship space and then you ask for land. And then it's very, very low price, like very low, not at market prices at all. At the moment, with the whole country, they're really trying to keep the structure going. Yeah, they want to change the system so that we all go under banks. And obviously, there's a lot of people that don't want that. A lot of rural people, tribal people from different tribes don't want that. So I'm trying as much as possible to keep that system going because it really contributes to food security. People can still have their old land rights intact. So those are the two systems that are currently going. I'm on the tribal system and own land that way. That land particularly happens to be where my grandfather and grandmother used to live. So I'm right on the foundations of their house. It's absolutely amazing because not a lot of people come to those specific spots. A few people in the area say that it is quite a special thing because I'm returning directly on the ancestral space. There are my grandfather's grave because obviously all the people buried around the area in the area. And so all the graves are there of my grandfather and grandmothers and all of them are there. And so it is a very special piece of land that I have. And it's quite a large valley. There's a few.
So there's a few things
Okay.
that I wanted to have you share about. It's the Ingonyama Trust, I believe, that holds that land and stewardship for any, it isn't only the Zulu people, I believe, it's any of the tribes, because we've got so many different tribes in South Africa.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure if the Ngonyama Trust actually is inclusive to all the other tribes, but I know that it's primarily for the Zulu people. I know that, for example, the Xhosa tribe also has their own setup with regards to land rights for their own people. And I know a few other tribes have those things as well. I do believe that it would be fantastic for us to create a system where all of it is inclusive in one kind of land trust. I described it to Zola that it's people focused, it's people centered systems and not so much money systems. The difference here is that if I lose this land that I have, I don't end up on the streets. It's built in a way that I can never be without land. If I have a dispute with somebody in the village, they will give me another piece of land in a different area, which is the same amount, but I will never be landless. And also my children will inherit this land, and I will be able to use it just as much as I can use it because my grandfather used it. And so it's that kind of gets passed on through the generations. Whereas in the other money system, if you don't pay the bank for 3 months, you basically are landless and end up on the street. So there's kind of like differences like that where it's much more like it feels really people like they really take care of people's security and so, yeah, it feels more homey. If you like, I don't have to worry about losing things and I can always negotiate. It's largely around community and relationships and how to negotiate with people and the relationships that we make. I remember when I was being placed on the land, some of the questions that they wanted to know was, what skills am I bringing? What is it that do I know? What resources am I bringing? And what participation do I feel I can have in the village? So these are the kind of questions that these are the systems that we really need to protect and create. Partly why I'm now situated there is because it feels more like a human system that really takes care of people and asks us to work on the relationship we have with people, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. Yeah.
Is from what I remember, and I'm not sure if it was like this when you came onto the land because it has been your ancestral, you're going back to that rather than coming in as a different person from that community. Because when you were saying they were asking you, what I remember of the system was there's the chief overlooking and the induna, which is more of a local person to that particular area. And then it's the others who are already living there that are brought into a celebration, a little bit of a party that's held. And it's like, oh, so you want to live here? You want to be on this land here? Well, we'll bring in the community and we're going to have a party and we're going to ask you some questions. And was it a bit like that? Were the other community members brought in? And was it a little bit of a party getting to know you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting coming as an outsider, but also not being an outsider because my family was based there. There's certain stories about my grandfather and grandmother that I didn't know that I've now come to learn. They didn't know that I existed. So I've arrived in the space as a Zulu woman, but also as a townsperson, whereas I'm already kind of a different person to who they are. There's still that integration process that I'm working through because there's a lot to learn of the way they've figured out how to live on the land and how they do things where they are. So when I did arrive, there are two ceremonies that had to happen. One of the ceremonies was the land ceremony, where it's like the spirit of the land. They invoke the spirit of the land to welcome me back in. We did that ceremony to be welcomed in because the spirit of the land is very important in Zululand. So the Sangoma can do that ceremony, but also the chief and the Induna can be there as well. They hold the ceremony of what needs to be done because they're more connected to the spirit world. There's a strengthening of the people that are on the land, the strengthening of the land and the strengthening of the people. There's a ceremony that we did around that. Actually, there were 3 ceremonies, so that's strengthening. And then there was the placing ceremony where I was then placed on the land, and that's where the whole village is invited. People get to see where my land is, and that's also so that people know where the boundaries are, so that everybody gets to know. The chief is like, okay, your land is from this tree to that mango tree over there and that river, and it borders the river here. And so when he's saying that, there needs to be witnesses and people who are there and present to see that, and then they also know. So the knowledge is not just with a few people. And then after that, we had a boogie. I had to buy all the drinks and the food and what have you. And that's just for them to also see my resources. How am I arriving in the space, people in the land? My brother came, which was very special. So they got to see part of my immediate family. And it was great. I got to meet quite a lot of the people in the village and very interesting characters, as you can imagine, how people have figured out how to live and all the interpersonal relationships they've created. The important thing on these ceremonies, they're really important, especially the spirit ones. So the land welcomes you
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. I hadn't heard about the spirit ceremony as well. That is really amazing that the ancestors are called and the spirit of the land is
Yeah.
called. That's very special.
It's very similar to Maori people.
That's why we thought it was such an interesting conversation with Zola, because there is actually parallel with the indigenous processes of land acquisition, reacquisition, or families coming back onto their ancestral land.
I was wondering how long have you been back? And if you have any other family members in the village.
I don't have any other family members in the village, but I've been back since October last year. I've been wanting to move since March 2020, but then lockdown happened. So I've been waiting that whole time, trying to move back. And then I had an opportunity in October to move where they lifted our lockdown. And then I just decided to go. So I've been there since October. My immediate family now doesn't live in the village, but everybody knows my mother. So I'm continuously hearing stories about my mother, my grandmother, and the fields. She was an organic farmer and she passed away when she was 100. And so there's these fields that are there that she used to grow, that everybody continuously, the older generation there, they want to know who I am. Everybody wants to know who you are. And so there's that element of being in family, but just not my immediate family. But I know that all the stories of people in my family.
Who left? Did your mom leave? Or how did it happen?
Okay, so my grandmother left in 1960. She left all her fields. I wanted to know, when she left, was she sad about that? Apparently, it really tore her apart to leave her fields and everything there. But she had to leave at that time. And the land has just been sitting up until the time that I came. In the valley, there have been other people buying the land under this traditional land system, but this spot was not being taken. When I did arrive, everybody felt it was something. I did resist it for about 2 weeks because it was a lot to take in for me when I first came in. And then they sat me down and I had to I think it was just an initial kind of shock response of what I was encountering. And then it was good after that, because I realized that I was being supported by more than just me, that the people in the village actually really do believe in this, in the support system coming together. And so they supported me to be present and to be there to do the ceremonies and to do everything that needed to be done. So that was really special.
Thank you.
And I wanted to add, Zola, if you find in your area that if someone says they want to come and occupy a piece of land, but then they don't use it, there's no land banking, basically. You can't preserve it. If the chief realizes this person's not really coming and doing anything on this land, not adding value, they basically just say, well, you didn't use it, so you lose it. Is that true for your area as well?
Yes. Yeah, that is very true. They basically absorb it back into the trust. Even if you do want it back, you have to go through that whole process again. You cannot just keep land lying for years. It's a people system. So if people need to use that land, then it becomes available for people. That keeps the prices down for people who can manage. So people who are not working, keeps it to a level that they can still have a piece of land, that they can maybe grow something. A lot of it is about food security. A lot of the land has been kept for people to just have food security, to build like a small house. The chief is quite strict about that. He does message me and say, how long have you been away? You need to put a certain structure. And the structure that can be on the land doesn't have to be like a double story. It doesn't have to be like a fancy anything. They want to know that you're committed and really wanting to be there. They want to see that you are involved, participating, and that you're just one person that is participating in this web in the community. It's not really about, oh, we're going to just take it away. It's not about that. It's more about they're trying to bring in that level of community and people to really be involved and do things. So yes, it very much is there.
Like you said, he's messaging you. So when are you going to start to really establish yourself? And so that leads me into the next question, which is, you were saying about people build with what they have available. So do you find that people are actually harvesting from their own land, or is there a bit of somewhere else in the community? If you don't have any wattle on your property, wattle being that tree, but you see that it's other places, how would you be able to get that wattle to be able to do a wattle and daub?
Yeah, so the experience with my family member. There are a few connections that she had with people that have access to wattle forest. And so we talked to one of the village people and they cut the wattle for her. So there's like lots of kind of various systems like that of people in the village that know where to get it. And then we just source it that way. But on the land itself, there is quite a nice forest, but there's bamboo. There's quite a few things growing on the land. A large amount of the material, let's say 70%, can be got from the land itself, like the mud and yeah. So what we've used, the only thing that's come outside from the land that we are is the wattle. That's the only thing. But other bamboo is from just 100 meters away, but 150 meters away, because we've got like a bamboo forest there. And the mud is obviously just there. And the builders are local. They basically live 500 meters away. So everybody is in the space. Not too many people are outside of that cycle. There's also a protective energy around that. 'Cause some of the builders don't like it when you bring in new builders from outside. They did tell me that. They just want a closed, nice system where everybody's creating things locally and supporting the local economy, strengthening those relationships. Where I've arrived, where the grandmother lives, she's very much around making sure that the relationships we create in the village are good so we can have that system where we're helping each other, where I can call on people to build and call on people for certain things. I mentioned to Zola, cup of sugar economy. I'm sure everybody knows what I mean. You can go to somebody else's door and ask for a cup of sugar. That system is so vibrant and alive. It was really surprising and shocking for me how it works so well, even with neighbors that you're not friendly with, that you can still go because there's a system underlying all the relationships. It's still wanting to support you, even though I'm not really friends with you. I'll still give you rice and sugar and all of that. So that was really, I don't know, it feeds something or it nourishes a human kind of system where I know that I will be taken care of, regardless of whether or not the neighbor likes me, which is quite interesting because there's a certain stability around that. So even with the building, there are people on the building site sometimes which we don't really get along with, but they're there because we're just building together. We sort out whatever it is, and then they leave. And so there's a system that supports everybody regardless, which is great. Yeah.
I just wanted to interject a happy memory I have from Impenge. I set up a community-based tourism program. It was so easy. I would drive around this part of Impenge, quite the rural, really in the heart of it. I was going around to different families saying, I'd like to have a homestay program here where foreign students will come and they want to learn in the community. Would you take a student into your house, treat them like your family, put them to work, fetching wood and water and helping to cook and clean, making space for them to sleep? Would you do that? The community was so excited about that. I'd say many other families that would like to host. All I needed was to start with one family. And then I say, well, who else do you recommend? And then I'd go to the next family, really just knocking on doors at that point. And it was very easy to put together this homestay program. And it felt very safe as well to bring these foreign people in. I actually felt, they're all looking after each other. I know I can trust the mothers or the head of the household looking after their new family member. I said to them, call them your daughter. And they loved it. And it was such a lovely program. It was so easy and lovely for those reasons, looking after each other. And the students, it's still today one of the most popular places when those students come, and they have all kinds of places to go. But Pendley is one of the most memorable places for these students because in those few days that they're there, there's just that warmth and the immediate wrapping around of the community spirit with these people that they have never felt before. And it's just such a radical thing for them that it was very important for me to, that was part of the transformation work that I do for having people who come from a very individualistic culture to really feel what it's like to be in the kind of culture and place that you're talking about.
Yeah. So when I arrived, that wrapping of somebody, it's quite an interesting feeling to feel when you've been living in an individualistic, like where you have to strive for yourself and make it, to do this whole thing by yourself. And then arriving there, there's already a bed, all these things available. And all you need to do is just participate as well in creating that. I participate as much as everybody else. I fetch the water from the river, which I have to also carry on my head. I also cook. I do chores every day. A lot of me that participates in the space is very body-based. I get to really use my body in cutting the bamboo, mixing the mixture, the cob mixture. And so a lot of it is just that. And then we all gather in like the kitchen in the night. We love gathering for like 2 hours in the night, which sometimes I don't do, but it's this different system that I didn't grow up with. I grew up in the town, which just feeds people on a different level. And it's just so welcoming. I don't know how many times the neighbors have come to ask for food from us. And there is this part of me that's individualistic, which sometimes doesn't know how to interact with that. And then it's so quickly like, of course, people need help. Every time I'm giving a cup of rice or whatever, I'm basically strengthening these bonds with the people. It's not about, oh, now they can come to me and no, it's just around being available for that interaction and that flexibility. Yeah. And these systems really need to be protected. That's what I've realized being there in the last 8 months. There's something that really needs to be protected. It's okay to have two systems. We don't all need to get absorbed.
It was really interesting for me when I came here to New Zealand. I felt very sad about being separated, being in suburbia, but not knowing anybody, being so close, but feeling so isolated. And it was just feeling a very foreign kind of a place to be in, suburbia. When I first went on to a marae, so a marae is where the iwi, the tribal, each tribe has their own marae, which is made up of different buildings. You have the whare nui, which is the large building, and that's usually a night where everybody puts the mattresses down and sleeps. Lots of things happen in the whare nui, which is the large house. And then there's the kitchen and the dining area, and then a whare paku, which is the toilet shower area, and a few other little structures. So that's usually what makes a marae. It's those collection of buildings, and it's where the Maori go for celebrations, funerals, get-togethers, and all kinds of things. After I'd been here for at least half a year, and I went on to a marae, and it was a full, what they call noho marae, which is where we were sleeping, staying, and really integrating. I said to somebody, this is the first time I've actually felt more normal. Like there's a sense of, for me anyway, of a more normalness and a sense of like, oh yeah, this is the way it's supposed to be, and this is the way it makes sense. And then a Maori person told me, well, do you know what the word Maori means? It means normal. Like, that is so interesting. That's where I felt normal. It was really the first time that I felt back home, because as you know, how I lived very close to Mpendle and working there and with those systems. And so, yeah, very much a loss just coming into the colonial style. But luckily we do have the Maori who hold that sense of what you're talking about. We at least have that in those lands, in those spaces.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So, and a lot of people really are craving that. So people here, they want to take a te reo class, which is learning the language. And then usually the te reo class will have a noho marae. And people really want that experience and are looking forward to feeling what that feels like. We have something called a papakainga. In the Zulu, you might call it maybe not a kraal, but it's where the family members all share a space. Here, a papakainga is where family members decide to build a little homestead together. It could be one big building or a few buildings. More and more people are saying, why is the Papakainga only for the Maori people? We like that model too. Why can't we all have that? Why is it only that on the Maori land, And there's a lot of these kinds of questions because people are craving those more communal, cooperative style. And that is a conversation I believe that we're bringing into the more colonial places of New Zealand, which is, hey, let's try to bring this Papakainga both in the physicality of it, but in the values and principles that guide that as well. And maybe you say the same thing too, that, hey, let's have more of this.
Yeah. And that house where everybody gathers here, as I call it the spirit house, because that's what you have to build when you first land on property. You have to build a spirit house for your ancestors. So everybody in Zululand has a spirit house. It's like an altar where all your ancestors are gathered and people go there to do ceremonies. Every time somebody arrives, you all gather in this house, call in the ancestors of the land and ancestors of people that were on there. So everybody's got like a little hut. They just call it a spirit house. And then you build your main house. Generally, there's always a spirit house where everything happens and everybody gathers. And it's nice because then there's just more than the physical people in the room. There's like all the grannies. It has a very nice feeling to it.
And it's usually mud and dung floor and usually mud and round and usually with a thatched roof.
It's mostly round. I'm not so sure why it has to be round, but I'm sure there's a very beautiful spiritual reason why. It's always round. There's always cow dung on the floor. That's how they paste the building. Even with the house that I was helping my family member, it's just ground. There's no cement or anything like that. It's like it has to be on the ground because you have to be connecting still to the ground energy. They break the ground, start to build the wattle around and place the wattle as the poles and then fill that up. So there's no cement involved. It's just rocks and ground. And then we've got some bamboo and put it around the structure. I think you've got some pictures. This particular house we did was square just because they'd built a square house before. And so 10 years previously, they'd created a kind of like 2 rooms and then one of them broke down. So we're just replacing one of the rooms. So it is a square house. On the property, there's 3 round houses already. Some of the other houses are just for living spaces. We started mixing the mud with a bit of grass and we cutting the grass on just around the house because we've got a lot of grass area. And she used rocks to make it more stable, which was really interesting. She was teaching me how to place everything. It's basically like you would do a cob mix. I've done quite a few cob mixes and it was such an easy process. I think this whole idea that building is for contractors, I don't know, she just really deconstructed that for me in such a big way. She just created a house and took it up.
It just reminds me when you were saying she just made it happen. I have my colleague in Impendle and she just went to a little wetland very close to where she had her land. She had a little frame, a little square rectangle frame. And she basically just made these little bricks and then put them out to dry. And then she had somebody build a little wooden frame. She tells me that she's had a baby. And I realized that she actually built her house, was making these bricks and building her house herself while she was pregnant. This lady is amazing. It was just fantastic to see that she was slowly, brick by brick, making this home for herself. She had a teenage son, so it was pretty much the 2 of them making this house for themselves. They brought in somebody to help with the roofing.
Deborah's asking how long it took. One of the walls, in a week, we had the wattle in. In a week, we had the poles in, the tiling, all the bamboo things were put in a day with all the mud and the rock in between. There was like, and then we kind of rested for one day because we were really pushing ourselves. And so it didn't take long at all. You could probably have a structure if everybody's helping, but and just cut her energy. And so she's now finished and it took her probably like 3 weeks to do it because she's on her own. I'm not there to help, but it was quite an undertaking and how big it is. So it's not so big. She's building a room for 2 daughters. So their beds sit side to side and there's a table in between. And that's about 4 meters by 4 meters. So 4 by 4, I guess. That's how big it is. 3 weeks is probably a long time, but she's in there every day. She's shoveling, cutting the grass, and she wakes up at like 5 in the morning. So she's just one of those people that's got the energy for it. One of the neighbors came and put the roof on, and that took about 4 hours to do. That wasn't very long. Yeah. Yeah. And so now we're just waiting for the windows, which she already had. And so we just kind of going to be doing the windows. And yeah, she's going to be plastering it. I don't know if she's going to wait for me to do the plastering. And then we use some of the brick from the old structure. There were blocks of really cured mud. And so we use some of that. And so that's just bamboo you see there just going across that we've put there. And yeah, and so that structure there, she says, will probably be there for about 10, 15 years. And she's okay with that. She's fine. And she doesn't mind. She says that when the time comes again, she'll just make another one. On a practical level, she doesn't think like contractors and things like that. And that's kind of like why I liked it. Even when I was saying to her, I need to also make a house, there was already 2 women that wanted to help me. So I'm wanting to build my grandmother's house. I just wanted to, because I'm on my grandmother's land, I want to make a roundhouse in memory of her. And that house, I'd like to be built in this way or more carbon straw kind of way. And so there's already 2 women that are willing to help me. And they realize that we really need to just help each other to make these houses and create them, and that we don't need to rely on contractors so much. So that's kind of the energy she brings, which is really cool. Most houses, the old kind of houses, are built like that. Definitely a lot of the mud structures are just built like that. It's only in the last 30, 40 years that people have started using brick and cement and bringing in more modern ways of building. But people still build with mud. A lot of people still do. It's just more accessible for them. Because also with cement, you have to have somebody who can work with it. There's just not a lot of that right now. People do use it, but just not a lot where I am.
If the government is supplying homes, they'll come in with the breeze blocks and the cement. Quite often you'll see at least one cement home because the government has supplied.
Yeah.
That was part of the government's campaign, was to say they will help people with housing. And so I remember in Mpendle, whenever I'd see one of those, it was usually government provided. Simple, still breeze block.
The kitchen that I was talking about, the room that we in, that structure has been there on the land for about 50, 60 years. And it is stronger than all the other structures that have been made prior to that, which is so interesting. That's what they've used, just mud on the ground. And so that's really interesting that it's just been standing there for a while. I have no doubt that it's going to carry on standing there for another 20, 30 years, which is incredible.
I remember in some places in Mpendle where a bit of the wall had fallen away, they just repatched that piece of the wall. It was just like, oh yeah, this piece of the wall fell. We'll just make some more mud.
I was living in Malawi for about 6 months in a mud home. And then I recently was talking to my friend about earth building, and he was saying how everyone wants to live in concrete. And he was saying, even though he like intellectually understands that earth building is more sustainable and cheaper and local, there's this strong pressure of modernization, and that people want to use concrete, not because it's better, but just because then it makes them feel more modern. I was wondering, is that dynamic going on in your community as well?
Yeah, there is a dynamic like that. When I was going to negotiate with the chief, he gave me an image of what kind of house he would like me to build. That house was a brick house with tiles, because that's kind of the image that the white people here have brought in terms of colonization. Like, this is a status when you've made it. And at the same time, what I liked, in contrast to that, when I did arrive, I saw a very proud Zulu man standing next to his mud house, and he just felt so content. Like, he had his cows and his mud house, and it felt like in the world where you have to get like a whatever R1 million house in order for you to have made it, and social structures and all of that. He didn't need to even make another mud house for him to feel that way. That really changed something for me around, I guess, happiness, and just like, and what is actually needed. What do we need in order for us to be content, happy, resilient, and reliant on ourselves. I'm guessing he also built it by himself. And he was just beaming with pride. And it just felt like I could reach that place, like my capability where it was more attuned to building a brick house and double story or whatever, it radically changed when I saw him. I could feel that my capability didn't have to reach to that anymore. He was my example now. I just want to be him. I just want to stand in front of my rondable and be like, I built this. And that's it. I don't need to achieve more than that. It's just so nice to see it from a Zulu man, and a man that is a Black man, and it didn't have to also be success always being dictated by the Western world, like what success looks like. That success can just mean what it looked like to me when I saw him. I feel like more people need to see and be in that. There's so much legislation that doesn't allow people to build the way that they want to build and the way that they want to be on land, and building codes and structures. All of that does not exist there. Thank God. I don't know what would happen if they can't build it this high and they have to have a land surveyor.
And I also just wanted to mention that most of the buildings don't have an inside toilet. They have the ventilated pit latrine. So people have a certain distance from the home. The plumbing is simple, and the electrical, somebody just comes around, usually also from the village, to bring a line out from the main line.
I mean, we don't have running water on the property itself, so we need to fetch the water. We need about 5 buckets in a day. And so that's also just revolutionized our whole thinking around water and how much you need and what are you doing with it, and the relationship that we have with water. Every land space is interacting with these 5 elements: water, fire, air, and how is it that we interacting with them? So those kind of thoughts have been really present for me, like how are we bringing water, and being really appreciative of the water that I bring in, and blessing it sometimes, just really being thankful for just having a river close by. A lot of families don't. It's really radical living. You could say it's also like a compost toilet because there's no water. And then when it's done on the particular property where I am, she basically just puts a tree. So she's put a tree in 2 other places where they had to put a tree. We've got mangoes and avocado trees, lots of avocado trees, lots of banana trees. So we've got quite a lot of food that grows on there, which she grew like 20, 30 years ago. So that's kind of like the culture there. And so me being there, I'm there as a student, or I'm learning just a lot. I'm really grateful that a lot of people are very willing to teach me and not excluding me because I'm a townsperson. If I'm willing to just learn and be there, then the wisdom and knowledge gets passed on. Yeah. Been an incredible experience.
Wow, that's awesome. And is your daughter able to be there with you sometimes?
Not yet. Very much a townsperson.
Yeah.
There will become a time where she can come. But at the moment, I'm just creating foundations and relationships. That's basically what I'm doing, just creating relationships and just really being there and them knowing that I'm there to be part of.
And when you are there, where do you stay if you don't have your own house yet?
I stay in the grandmother's roundhouse. She wants me to sleep next to her. So we have like a roundhouse where we sleep. It's like a communal sleeping area. And we kind of sleep all together in one space. And she doesn't want it any other way. So she wants us to. It's also just for safety. We do a lot of things in there. We store the food there. It's like a little pantry. She realizes that I need to also make my own house, but she doesn't really want me to do that. She enjoys me being there and just being part of their little unit, which is great. We have a really great time when we're there.
Something really felt relevant about how you mentioned that there seems to be this social thing of wanting to build. I think you kind of mentioned wanting to move towards modernism. I'm just about to start a new job in an organization, and I've watched some YouTube clips about the organization. They've said, we're now making houses more modern so that there's not any shame around living in a house that doesn't look modern. I felt so sad to see that I'm kind of wondering now how I can be a part of making this shift towards finding pride and building with Papatuanaku, the Earth Mother, and building with what we have, and find pride in actually sharing and not in having to stand alone.
There's certainly a lot of shaming of the way you live and the dwelling. And like I said, we also kind of work through that. I think that's also seeped in because of colonialism and like different ways how we measure success, how we measure like a good house. And so there are people who are really proud and just build the way they build. And that's the majority of the people, thank God. But there's also like some people who do feel that shame. You see, then they start doing brick houses. When you go closer to the town where we live, closer to the coast, you start to see the transition into brick houses. People want really fancy. So you start having people who are fencing their spaces, whereas in the rural spaces, you don't see a lot of people fencing off. This idea of fencing off is not so big. Whereas when you go towards the towns, then it's like people then have all these kind of like, this is my area. You see a lot of that. It's also interesting to see the difference, to see the people that want to keep the other system going and who's more welcoming of the other system. But there's a lot of shaming. And I think part of the just like taking the shaming out is just to build one of the houses and to live in it. And I mean, they also was like, how is it that I want a mud house when some of the people in the family don't want one? And so we're having those discussions of like, I want one because easy. I've seen one being made, so I'm going to have one. That's as simple as that. Without actually explaining it too much, it's just easy. And all the materials are there.
It reminds me of Marion. She came to the Women Revolutionizing Housing and said she wanted to build a 30 square meter. Basically, the way that you're talking, it's so rare to find here in Aotearoa, but she's really determined to use every bit of what nature provides around her and to have it be a community process. So it's such a rare thing. I'm just quite keen to cover her story as well, because we need more of these stories of women believing that they can create their own house and it's not going to be so ridiculously expensive, or getting materials is going to be the problem, or not having the skills. She's going to prove to us that it's possible. That's why I wanted you to share your story, because we need to hear more of these stories. Women can believe they can build their own place and not be hindered.
It really helps to not have the building codes, because I think if we did have building codes in that area, a lot of people wouldn't be able to build. So it helps to have that freedom. There's a lot of freedom around that. And I think that's what we're trying to protect, that people still have the freedom to build whatever they want, even if they're building like a tiny house, which is just one room or whatever size, that they can just do that. And there's a lot of that there. When I say grown people just build one little room and that's it, and they don't build anything else. We've got to just make that okay again and normalize that.
I just want to thank you both Zolas, Zola and South Africa now. Thank you for bringing your kōrero to us about what you've been doing. And it's very similar to our culture, what you guys do. And I think, so there's so many issues for Māori and non-Māori in New Zealand around land. Māori who have access to land, and there's Māori who don't have access to land. Then you have non-Māori, they definitely have to buy land. You know, there's less restrictions for you guys over there, which is really hard over here. So thank you, Zola in South Africa. And my question is to Zola here in New Zealand. How possible do you think, because I'm all for women taking a stand with this type of thing, going back to Papatuanaku and all of that, it's easy for us to do that, especially us being mothers and female and connecting to the whenua, Papatuanaku, the land, right? But in regards to restrictions and buying land, how possible do you think this type of thing is for us in general.
I don't think we are going to get around the health and safety regulations and all the rest that New Zealand loves. But I do think in terms of being able to build more creatively, I mean, Marian's going to show us something else beyond what we typically know.
Yes.
And I do believe having land in a trust helps, because that land in the Ingonyama trust that Zola was talking about and on Maori land, there's more creativity that can happen with how things are set up and who can participate. And I just think it takes a bunch of people willing to invite, like Marian wasn't shy to say, I'd like you to pull in. You can sponsor a material or just come and help. And we need more people saying, I'm making a house and it's going to be a community effort. The narrative needs to change. Like, again, that's why I brought Zola on, is because she's got a narrative that that's what works generationally. It works for the land. It works for the people. It works for the economy. And that we need more stories like that to see how we build the threads of relationships and our connection to the land. It is in this style of building, and it's very important.
I just enjoyed hearing the story about Mary and her intention to build a 30 square meters, because I have young friends here who have bought a little piece of land close by to me in Tarleton here, and it has an orchard on it. They currently live in Wellington, but they plan to move up and live in a caravan while they're building their house. And right from the start, they wanted to be less intrusive of the plantings there as possible. And so they found a little part of the property where they could put their tiny house without disturbing the rest of the orchard. They decided to make a mud house, build it themselves, and buy the materials as they can afford it and start putting things together. And so sharing that story is encouraging me to encourage them to see what materials they can source without having to buy expensive things. It's exciting. They're going to build this little place where they can live, and then later when they can afford it, they might build an extra little piece on the property, a little dwelling where they can have it for maybe a studio for their work and have a guest sleep in.
There's this other way that things are done. It's what I was saying is the cup of sugar economy, where different families support each other to all get passed around the community and everybody uses them. And there's all these beautiful, interesting interpersonal arguments about all of that, but it's just part of the whole thing. If we need something, I know that we can find it in the families that are there. So that's a strong system. That's what I was saying in the beginning, that I didn't know how strong that system was until I went in there, and it actually holds quite a lot of the relationships there. Yeah. And just in reference to your friends, they have the ground. One of the things that we checked really informally, just the clay content of the ground that we were on. We didn't do soil tests or anything like that, but we came with a shovel just to see how much soil and how much clay is in the soil. And we just had about 3 centimeter, 4 centimeter of clay on the surface of what we took out. And we figured, okay, that's good soil to build with. So it was a very simple test. Obviously, if you want to do more, like if they want to do a more informal kind of testing of the soil to see how much clay content they have, so that they can build something that can work for them. Because obviously if it's too sandy, they can't build. Maybe they need to look at sandbags and those kind of structures. It's also something that we're looking at doing here in KZN as well. Simply looking at the content of the soil they have. It's very quick to see what you have and what you can work with. And once they put their hands in it, like I'm a great believer in that the soil and the land starts to tell you what you need to do. I think we've disconnected from knowing those codes and how the land communicates to us. When we start actually touching the soil, that's when the communication starts to happen and we start to learn. It's all around us, like this building, and it's the time to look at all of that and sit in it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Zola. I hope that you stay connected with us. Teach us a little bit of Zulu. It'll be so much fun.
Okay. So how you say hello is sawubona, and that means I see you. It's not just I see you physically, but it also means I see you as part of me. So that's what that means. So we say that to everyone. And then you say Sani Bonani when you're saying hello to everybody. We are here and we're seeing you all as a manifestation of everybody here. What's another one? Unjani, how are you? Unjani.
Siapila.
Yapila, yes. And Yapila means I'm fine, but it actually means I am alive. That's probably like the simplest way I can say in English, but it just means I'm alive. When you say, how are you? I'm alive. I think the way we speak is we just reach more into the soul structure of the person.
And so we would say to you, Hambagashle.
Hambagashe, yes.
And maybe
go well.
Yes, and you would say to us,
To stay well. Sana is stay, and Hamba is go. So go well, and thank you.
So you said to rest well, and you sent your love. You said thank you. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love it.